Today, I will be your presenter the 17th of May, Helen Lacey, and Crystal Ryan will be our moderator, and Crystal's there to answer any questions if we have any as we go along. Please let me know. So to ask questions, you just need to be able to expand the questions box and type any questions into the question box. We'll answer all the questions at the end of the session as always, but please feel free to ask away as we go through the presentation. So the focus of today's Wednesday webinar session is about e-learning spaces and STEM. Thinking about practical STEM activities using the Smart Learning Suite software and smarts hardware in e-learning spaces. So it's particularly pertinent where we are today and the conversations we've been having and the keynote speeches that we've been listening to. So hopefully lots of information for you. So starting right from the very beginning, we will today definitely be looking at ways that we can integrate STEM using Smart Notebook, examples of using the gamification piece of Smart Lab in the STEM setting, smart response ideas, so assessment for STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths, and obviously examples of collaborating in a STEM environment as well. So today we will look through the software and how we can give you examples of using the Smart Learning Suite effectively in a STEM environment. So before we even start that, let's have a conversation about e-learning spaces and future learning spaces. And particularly when we're thinking about future learning spaces, we're thinking about the Smart Learning Suite software and the technology we have to support that. One of the keynote speeches today at the Sydney's at the conference was all about pedagogy, spatial and technology and where these merge. So the Director of the Future School Programme at New South Wales DOE today was talking about how important it is to have these three things overlapping, and with the technologies that you have from Smart Technologies we can definitely do that. So we know that we have the pedagogy and the practice as we always have had within the Smart Notebook software, and we can also make sure that we're engaging and relevant by using Smart Lab. We can collaborate together using AMP, and we can use this across spaces and across locations, and we can also focus on the assessment that we all need to be able to do today, and we can make sure that that can be done on any device in any location. So the kinds of spaces we're seeing smart technologies going into are collaborative spaces, huddle spaces, and spaces where the technology is easily accessible and relevant to teaching and learning. So these could be in flexible learning space rooms around schools where you can have small groups, or in a more traditional classroom style. But what we're seeing more and more frequently are schools renovating and changing their perspective on how classrooms should be used and how learning spaces should be used. So we're seeing lots of renovations and hearing today about lots of announcements for upgrades of schools and future focused schools where teachers and students have access to using technology outside of the classroom setting and have formal and informal learning spaces, and have the software and the tools to make sure that we can actually have those formal and informal learning spaces accessible to them. So being able to use the software at home or an outside environment. Some of the surveys that have taken place at Macquarie University talk about students wanting to have learning spaces outside near trees, and can we do that using the Smart Learning Suite software that we have on offer? Okay, so let's start with Smart Notebook as we always will do, and let's have a conversation about examples of using STEM in the Smart Notebook sessions. So we talked last week about units of work that are created in Smart Notebook, and these being available on the Smart Exchange and being able to access them on the Smart Exchange at any time and download the content that's there and take the pieces that are pertinent to us and use them for their classrooms. So there are some really interesting STEM notebooks that have gone up there recently, like things like Getting Started with Scratch. This is very much the style of smart notebook where we're following the bouncing ball. We can go from page to page and understand what Scratch is about, and then we have lesson 1 followed by lesson 2 followed by lesson 3, and all of the lessons have links and little code club activities that could be handed out to classrooms, and all of these resources are out on the Smart Exchange. So please feel free to navigate your way to the Smart Exchange. Make sure that you're able to use the standards aligned and search through the content that's available there for you according to the year group that you're teaching and the subject area you want to focus on. So if it's science, you can search through the science and actually find standards aligned resources and content that's available for you within the Smart Exchange. Okay, so lots and lots of science, technology and engineering content that already exists there. But many times when we go into classrooms these days, what we see are teachers using Smart Notebook to capture the learning journey, to upload student work and maybe even to create videos. So we have lots of teachers actually taking pictures and putting videos and content up into Smart Notebook as an aid to and a reflection of the learning that's taking place in the classroom at the time, so that the teachers can actually share the students' work, and the students are very proud to have their work being shown on the smartboard, and also they can build on what they've learned over time. So one of the STEM projects that we see frequently in some of our primary schools around Australia is chooks and the chicken coop and the life cycle of chickens, and this very often means that schools themselves have a small chicken coop and they may be videoing the chickens. So we can do things like embed or link videos into our Smart Notebook softwares, or get the kids to video the chooks and then put the videos up into our Smart Notebooks, and also understand the children using the smartboard as a learning space in the classroom. Sometimes we want the students to actually create their own content in Smart Notebook and be able to tell a story about what they've learned particularly when they want to demonstrate the learning that they've done in the classroom. So creating something like this is actually quite easy to do. If we wanted to actually put student content into a Smart Notebook, all we would need to do is insert an image from or picture from a scanner. So feel free at any time to add images that you've already got on your computer, but if you have access to a scanner, you can insert directly into Smart Notebook pictures from scanners, and very often your pictures look like this, so don't forget you can resize your picture. And then we could, if we wanted to tell a story, we could use the Smart Recorder with the students' images and actually start telling a story. So here we have an image of a chicken that one of the students has drawn. And what we're able to do is we're able to cut out this image of the chicken using the Smart Capture toolbar, and I can cut around the chicken that one of the students has actually drawn here, and we can manipulate this object to tell a story or to tell the life cycle of the chickens, or how we're caring for the chickens, or any other STEM objective we have in the environment. So once I've cut the chicken out, it asks me what I want to do. I'm going to send it to a new page in Notebook. Apologies for my coughing. And we can see that this is actually sent to another page in my Smart Notebook presentation that I have right here. I actually want that bird to exist over the background I've got on page 12 as opposed to page 11. So all I'm going to do is actually just select the object and drag it into the page where I want to create my story. So I might be taking a story that is about a chook at the school, and I now might want to record a student's voice or a student's action and tell the story of how the chook has moved across the shed. So we can do this in two ways. One of the ways that we can actually do is using the Smart Recorder. So if I click the lesson recorder, I can create a recording of movement in my Smart Notebook file. So if I create a new recording, everything I do to move or even to annotate over the top to perhaps label certain things is actually going to be recorded by the lesson recorder. So I can play the recording and you can see my movement and you can see any annotations that I may have made using my tools on my toolbar there. So that's one way of recording to tell a story. I could choose an alternate way to record to tell a story. So I could decide, if I remove this, that if I choose at the very bottom of my toolbar, I can pull up a menu of tools that we have for the Smart Learning Suite, and I also have the Smart Recorder, and the Smart Recorder actually sits not just within the Smart Notebook page but sits over the internet, over websites, over anything. It floats over the top of any application I have open. And what I actually can do is if I actually hit record, it's not only going to record my voice, it's actually going to record my actions and my movement and everything that I have just said and done. So if I press stop, it then asks me what I'd like to do with that recording. So if I pop it onto my desktop, it's going to give me time and date stamp there, and it turns into a little recording, and I can actually play that recording back and it will have recorded my voice as well as my actions. So you could actually hear some of that, hopefully. So you can record all the actions that are in that place. We can actually hear all of that recording. So using the Smart Recorder is a really great tool in a STEM environment for students to actually show what they've learned, to reinforce the learning that's taken place in the classroom, for them to tell a story of what they've understood about that science unit of work or that life cycle unit of work that you've just been doing. And very often what we're now seeing in that learning journey is many more teachers actually using the smartboard in this way, where the students are actually reflecting on everything that they've learned and building up that whole story of where their learning started and where their learning ends in the end. Further examples of this are when we use alternate tools with our smartboard. So using things like Minecraft with the smartboard and capturing parts of the Minecraft images that we can see on our computers and keeping those images into Smart Notebook software, using things like Google Glasses and actually capturing the students using the Google Glasses and filming them and putting them into Notebook. So this particular group of pictures comes with a story of how teachers have used this in the classroom. So this is the students actually learning about the Great Barrier Reef, and every single day of this particular unit of work the children learned about fish and coral and animals and Aboriginal stories, and every time they drew a piece of coral they brought it into Smart Notebook and cloned that coral. So they then resized it and cloned it to make this picture. So one fish was drawn just as I've shown you, as with a chicken, and then what we're able to do is to clone that chicken, so we can make more than one copies of the chicken, and we could resize the chicken to have a small group of chickens. Well, the same thing occurred with our fish just here to make these lovely pictures. So the students learned about coral, and then for homework they went home and they actually created that coral in Minecraft. And over the course of 8 weeks, they actually built the Great Barrier Reef in Minecraft, and the teacher was able to screenshot all that the students were doing at home and match it up with what they'd learned in school. And then the students were able to get the Google Cardboard glasses and actually walk through the Great Barrier Reef that they'd created and really see what they built. And then the teacher went and actually decided to kill the fish and blow up the reef. And the conversations that were had after that were all about, this is what's really happening, and the students were actually very upset about what had happened to the reef, and the teacher was able to capture that emotion in actually recording the students' voices and understanding exactly how they felt about the reef being destroyed, surely but quickly. So it really was an excellent learning story there. We can also plug our smartboards into things like 3D printers. This is an example of some students who'd used some 3D Play-Doh to create a shell of a car, and once they'd printed the shell out of the car, they were actually to use a little STEM project to build the engine of the car, and they put the shell on the car and raced the car and looked at the data and the analytics on the smartboard afterwards. So, you know, your smartboard is a tool. It's meant to be used with many other different products, Makey's, Scratch, Google Cardboard, Minecraft, whatever you choose to use in your classroom. Your smartboard is a tool to aid that kind of technology is being used in a STEM space. Okay, so once again, within the Smart Notebook software, we still have access to the gallery, and within the gallery we have access to lots and lots of 3D content, and the sorts of 3D content we have accessible are these kind of things here. So we can get some animated content like a beating heart. We could get some static content, but it shows us the structure of a cell, or even the structure of a kidney and how a kidney looks. Or maybe we're talking chemistry and we want to understand the properties of water and H2O, or much more sophisticated understanding of a particular chemical compound and how it exists. And we can actually decide how much we want to be able to rotate this, or how it might view in a different perspective. We might want to understand the DNA or a helix structure. And what we can also do to these 3D tools is we can actually do things like add labels. So if I right click on a spot and I add a label, I can add a label to this particular item. And I might decide that I want to write that this is the eye socket. So I'm writing with my pen that this is the eye, and then I'm able to drag and drop that label into here, and as I move my skull, that label is pretty sticky to it, so we can really get a good look and a good understanding of what else we could label in the skull image that we've got in 3D. So there are loads and loads of 3D content that's available. The best recommendation I have is to actually click through the 3D content that's available on the Smart Exchange, because we know that that 3D content is going to work successfully within Smart Notebook software. Sometimes we find 3D content that doesn't quite translate, and we need to make sure that it has the right ending to work successfully within Smart Notebook software. So go through the gallery, go through the Smart Exchange, and you can be guaranteed that that 3D content will really work. And there are many things that you can actually be doing with that. So this is just recapping on all the STEM sorts of things that we can do in Smart Notebook software. We also know that now in Smart Notebook software we have YouTube as an add-on, and this is a white hat search for YouTube. So once we've searched for something within YouTube, those videos will embed themselves into Smart Notebook just like this. And what you'll notice about the embedding of the video into Smart Notebook is that there are no adverts. So you can play the video immediately, and there's no adverts that we need to skip. It's playing it clearly. We can hear the whole story of what's going on, of the construction of the harbour bridge, and it will stay there for future use when we want to use it. So really excellent YouTube add-on now, and removal of all of those adverts. Also within Smart Notebook for STEM, and particularly thinking about the maths part of STEM, we now have access to Geogebra, so again to the puzzle piece, and again to the add-ons. We actually have a Geogebra, so that was elements of math tools were available here. The Geogebra allows us to actually have working widgets that we can manipulate and use for high school and university level maths. So just as we look along here, we have an interactive parabola, and as I move the parabola, the equation changes until we can get it right. So those sorts of widgets are freely available within the Smart Notebook software. Clicking on Geogebra and scrolling through the offerings that Geogebra has for teaching maths in a math setting, right up to high school and university settings. And again, you can search on the internet for other Geogebra widgets that will embed themselves quickly and easily into Smart Notebook. We also, on the math theme within Smart Notebook, you also obviously have math tools, so things like the protractors, and we can rearrange our toolbar to reflect math tools if we wanted to. So I'm right clicking on the toolbar and I can select items that I particularly want to have on my toolbar that might be linked to math. So I might decide that I want to have a measurement tool. I can select this and drag and drop it and pop it into my toolbar, so I have a customized toolbar that relates to my maths functions. The pi sign that we have here actually gives us more links to maths tools, but to get things like protractors, very easy for us to do, very easy for us to get angles and measure angles in a classroom. We've got text that we can actually recognize as maths text. So if I look at this text here, I can actually recognize this as maths, and once I've recognized it as maths, I can actually do some maths actions, right click to maths actions, and I things like generate graphs of these maths. So there are many things that we can do in our shape recognition tool. So if I choose the pen and I choose the shape recognition tool and I start drawing shapes with my pen, you can see that my shape, which wasn't a great circle, has been automatically made into quite a good circle. I can do things like divide my shapes using that math pen. So I could divide it into 8, and then I can actually see that I've got it into 8 components, and I can actually bring them out. So if we had that a little bit bigger, it would show me that I have 8. I could use the math tool, the shape recognition tool, to draw things like triangles, and once I've looked at the triangles, I might want to be able to see the angles that are visible. So drop down menu to show the interior angles, and as I resize my triangle, I can actually have those self-adjust to the right angles that are being shown on my triangle. So lots and lots of maths functionality in Smart Notebook for that STEM classroom. So outside of Geogebra and outside of the maths tools that are available in your toolbar, we also have those the shape recognition pens with some functionality for maths in those as well. So really interesting maths things. Okay, so that's covered off most of what we're going to show for STEM in Notebook, and when we have purchased the Smart Learning Suite, we also have access to those other 3 areas, lab, which is the gamification piece, response, which is the assessment piece, and then AMP, which is the collaboration piece. So I'm going to show you some Smart Lab examples, and I'm going to direct you to the Smart Exchange website, which you can find in the tab at the top here. And when you're in the Smart Exchange, you can actually search for lab activities, and you can actually search for either science, technology, engineering, or maths activities within that. So the sorts of things we might be able to do, we can see if we can push the boundaries of the hotel internet today and see if we can do this. So this is a little maths activity or a patterns activity that was set by one of the teachers, and the teachers wanted the students to use their devices in their classroom to take a photograph to create a pattern. And you can see that the patterns that they've got here are an AABC pattern or a ABBC pattern. So this was talking about genetics, and the students are then invited to take a photograph of anything that was close by to them that reflected that particular pattern. So we're going to have a go if we can do this today. If you've got a smart enabled phone, and what you can actually do is you can navigate yourself to classlab.com, and when you're at classlab.com, you can put in my teacher code, which is 8308 1300, and that's my teacher code that I have, and this is my activity that I have running. And as soon as I have people joining us on this, their names will appear at the bottom of this little section here. So hopefully we can get some contributors that can come on today and be part of this session. Okay. And once you've joined the activity, so we can see that we've got, I'll just do the code again, so that was 8308 1300, and if we can get people onto the activity. Maybe we won't try that today because I think that there is pushing the Wi-Fi of the hotel a little bit too much. But once we've done that, what I was showing you in that original picture was that the students can actually take a photograph of the patterns that they see, and they can send the photographs to my lesson using Smart Lab. So all Smart Lab activities have this little tool here which allows us to connect or to start an activity and to send it to our students, and our students can actually contribute from their devices. They don't have to be phones, they could be computers, they could be any devices whatsoever. So that was one example. There are many, many lab examples on the Smart Exchange. Another example is a younger aged activity which is to do with prime numbers, and this is creating a game using the Smart Lab activity that allows us to decide whether or not we could choose a prime number or a non-prime number, and if we get it right we can blow up the other pirate ship. So creating a game like this is really very easy to use on the Smart Lab activity. Not only can we play this at the smartboard, at that teaching hub where the students can come up and interact and have a go at this game, we could push this activity once again out to devices, and the students can play this either on their devices and they would get feedback on how they were doing at that particular time. To create that game, really simple. I'm going to start a new page. I'm clicking on the game Smart Lab icon, and the one that we just saw was one that was sorting activity. So I think it was this one here, super sort, and I can choose my activity, so prime numbers or not prime numbers, and once I've chosen those numbers, so we could have 23 or we could have 2, and once we've done this we can choose which of these activities we want as a background. So I could have been in space or in the jungle, or I could have been a garden or a dragon or a rock concert. That one was chosen pirates, and when we click finish we've made our game. So it's a really, really simple simple activity to do and to create the games just as you've seen. So this game, much more content added into there obviously, but a little game that we can push out to devices or we could play at the smartboard at any particular time. Other games might be a bit more sophisticated. So this game, as an example, is one where we have a closed procedure on what the structure of DNA is. So this was text that was taken from the internet around DNA structure, and so the students would come up and they would actually try and answer the questions on their smartboard, or if they chose to, this could be actually done on their devices. And as the students want to complete this activity, this could be pushed to their devices and they could do it themselves on their devices, or they could come up and do it at the smartboard. You can check the activity and get feedback on how the students have done in that setting. Again, really easy to do. Creating the game, go to Smart Lab, choose a background or an activity you want to do, and that particular background was fill in the blanks. Write your text goes here. You define your blank, so we're choosing these two things as our blank. We choose our background, so that background was in a science lab, and our game is created so quickly that we can actually then send this to the students' devices, or the students can play at the board and they get immediate feedback. So a good example of use of this is where that student has finished before everybody else in the class, and the teacher can say, please go away and create a game that shows the learning that you've just done, and then we'll all come together at the smartboard and we'll play the game that you've just created. So excellent use of reinforcing learning and relevance for students. Okay, the third of the 4 pieces is smart response, and I'm very aware that we've got a little tiny bit of time left in this. So a smart response is that assessment piece, and using that assessment piece to understand what learning has been taking place in the classroom and make formative and summative assessments. So one example we've got here is a little assessment piece on questions on the Sydney Harbour Bridge and engineering the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And what actually happens here is, once again, I can push this assessment to all my students' devices. So I can create the assessment using the little tool here, which is Smart Response 2. It's a builder. It tells me, asks me if I want to ask the kinds of questions I want to ask, multiple choice, open-ended. I can create this by dragging and dropping in images into it, and what actually happens is you're able to push this quiz out to the students and students' devices, and then the students can actually participate in the quiz at their own pace, and they, at the end of the session, the teacher can give them individual feedback onto their devices, but the teacher is also able to export the results into an Excel spreadsheet, which will time, date and stamp just like it was earlier on today, and that you're able to review how the students participated in this. And the best way to actually experience Smart Response is to have a go at doing it. And we're not going to have time to do that today, but you will have access to this webinar to have a test and see what it's like after this webinar session. Okay, again, the fourth piece of the Smart Learning Suite software is Smart AMP, and I mentioned last week about watching the Engineering Brightness YouTube video, and I think for STEM this is particularly pertinent because this really is an excellent STEM project where the students are real life problems, students around the world not having access to light to do their homework, and students across 3 countries collaborating together using AMP to build lights to aid their fellow students around the world in getting light so they can do their homework. And what AMP actually looks like is a shared digital space where students can actually go and look at work at the same time. So I'm just going to play you this video this time so that you can see what's happening with Engineering Brightness here. I would not be studying engineering today if it hadn't been for this class. If it weren't for these lights, I wouldn't have found my passion, helping me learn what I'm good at, and saying, hey, I don't care that I'm a girl, and if I'm good at this, and this is my passion. I'm actually going to have to stop that video there today, but please do watch it because that will show you how you can work collaboratively in real time across countries, across campuses, doing an engineering project. Please just Google Engineering Brightness and you'll have access to that. I'm very conscious that I've gone over time. There is lots and lots of content available for you to actually participate in the training using the Smart Tech website, or visit our Smart Technologies ANZ website, and on the ANZ website we'll actually put links to these webinars, and this presentation will be made available for you so that you can actually access this presentation and click on the links and see all of those activities as you go. So I'm really sorry we've run over time today, so any questions there? Crystal, did you hear any questions?
I have got one, Helen. What version of notebook are you demonstrating in?
So today I'm using Smart Learning Suite 17.
Beautiful. So that's the only question for now. Any other questions? Just leave it a minute. No? Okay.
And please make sure that you visit our Smart ANZ website and you'll be able to access the link to this presentation that you can use, and also we will record it and have it on YouTube and you'll be able to access it from YouTube. Okay. Any other questions before we say goodbye?
No, I think that's it, Helen.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for joining us and see you next time. Thanks. Bye.